Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. We are headed out to the baseball park to see all the horticulture action that occurs before a game. David Hillock discusses herbicides. And we are staking and weaving our tomatoes at the OSU Student Farm. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Oklahoma Gardening is also a proud partner with Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Shape Your Future provides resources for Oklahomans to make the healthy choice the easy choice.
I love sharing with you guys the cool things that plants can do. We're back here at the student farm. I want to share with you a tropical plant that you might find in some Oklahoma landscapes. It's important to know which plants we are dealing with so that we can continue to maintain them successfully for years to come. Today we are at the Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark, and joining me is Jeff Jackson, who is the head groundskeeper. And today we're going to learn a little bit about what it means to be a groundskeeper. Jeff, thank you so much for having us down here today.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, so you are a horticulture OSU alum, right?
Yes, I am.
You found yourself in an amazing office to work in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about what it means to maintain the grounds. I mean, we're in the middle of baseball season, so you're pretty busy, right?
Yeah, about halfway through the season so far, we've played 36 AAA baseball games, about 20 high school baseball games, and a couple other special events that we've had on the field. It's been a crazy weather pattern. It seems like it was kind of cool and rainy all up until about the last 2 weeks, month or so, and the heat's kicked on pretty good.
Well, I just know how it is to maintain a garden. I can't imagine having that many eyes looking at my work. Tell me a little bit about, so baseball season goes from March to October, correct? Yeah. So how do you get it green in March?
This is a full Bermuda grass field. We actually start in late December, early January. We've tried a little bit of a new system here, whereas you might see ryegrass overseed or things like that.
Right.
I've actually found it more beneficial to the Bermuda grass health to go full Bermuda grass. So I actually use turf pigments, turf colorants, turf paints that have recently been released. Really helps the grass absorb a lot of heat. As you know, green absorbs a lot more than a white dormant Bermuda grass would be. And I also have a full field of turf grass growth blankets.
Okay.
Those are permeable blankets that kind of act as like a greenhouse effect that can heat the soil temperature up at a good 5 to 10 degrees more than it would just naturally out on a non-covered surface.
So you sort of camouflage it until it starts doing its own thing. And you mentioned Bermuda grass. What type of Bermuda grasses are you dealing with here? They're not just your regular common grass.
Yeah,
right?
So we've got some of the latest hybrid Bermuda grasses on the infield and foul territory. We have the newest Oklahoma State Tahoma 31 Bermuda grass. On the outfield, we have a Tiff Tuff hybrid Bermuda grass. It was at the Tifton, Georgia.
And I know those need a lot more maintenance. Of course, you're giving that out daily here, using a real mower. Tell us a little bit about what is that daily maintenance look like for this Bermuda grass?
So we're mowing daily, basically. We mow with a walk-behind reel mower on the infield and foul territory, just because those are a lot more high traffic. We don't want, like our big riding fairway mower, we don't want that kind of the traffic on the infield or foul territory, so we're usually walk mowing those, and we also collect the clippings on those areas. The outfield, we're also mowing daily. That's with our Toro 3575 fairway mower. It mows the outfield. We kind of have it a specific pattern. We have the stripes where the ball tries not to snake, So if you have a bunch of crisscrosses with a reel mower and rollers on the back, the ball might snake. So we try to have it out to all.
What does that mean, the ball might snake?
So if you're an outfielder or you're an infielder, if it crosses, the stripes intersect, the ball might move this way or this way. So you want the ball to play as true to the outfielder or the infielder as possible.
Okay, so it helps the ball player kind of predict where the ball's going to be rolling.
Where it might roll, or where even you might position a player. You might position them on a certain dark stripe or a light stripe.
Okay, I never realized that, and it makes sense, the way the grass is laying can actually influence the ball movement. So obviously it's not just grass, you're also dealing with some different dirt or textures areas. Tell me about those.
Yes, so first I'll talk about what's underneath the actual grass. Is a little different than what a homeowner might see. So we actually have, it's basically a USGA style putting green under this entire surface. So we have an 18-inch collector drain that goes all around the entire field. We have 4-inch lateral lines that go across the field every 15 foot. Above that, we have 4 inches of pea gravel, and then we have 10 inches of 92A engineered USGA sand blended with 8% peat moss. Then you would have your sod on the top. We have that under the grass just because we are playing so many games. You need the field to drain. If we're dumping the tarps or something like that, you need the field to drain and be safe for the players. Usually within 30 to 45 minutes after we dump the tarp. So the water needs to percolate and move down through the soil.
So I would imagine you're irrigating a lot, and that also helps with that drainage as well.
Yes, so we actually have a water reclamation system that all the drains tie into from the field. So we're actually reclaiming that water and pumping it and using it back out through the irrigation surface. So we're watering more deeply and infrequently just to try to get our roots to dry for that water and things like that. You don't want them shallow where you're just kind of feeding the shallow roots. You need the roots to drive down through the sand and things like that.
Okay, all right, very good. And so going back to like the warning track and the pitcher's mound and all of that stuff, let's talk a little bit about some of that aggregate. Yeah,
so the infield dirt portion is made up of an engineered infield mix called Dirt Edge Professional Infield Mix. It's actually mined out of Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, and is engineered and blended with the right amount of silt, the right amount of sand, coarse sand, fine sand, medium sand. We have a 6-inch column of that infield mix on the infield surface. It's one of the more professional infield mixes that you can have these days. It really helps with water retention, but also water shedding. And then we have calcined clay and expanded shell manufactured by Dirt Edge as well. Those are kind of top dressings, kind of helps for sliding, water retention. If we have any rain gains or things like that, the calcined clay can absorb water a lot quicker.
But I know you're quick to cover it, right?
So the dirt portion of the field is probably the most critical. That's where the game is played the most. If the dirt portion of the infield was to get too wet or unplayable or unsafe for the players, we'd have to postpone the game or potentially cancel the game. And that loses a lot of revenue for the ballpark. We play 150 games throughout the year, so it's hard with the team schedules, to try to reschedule games and things like that. Plus all of our paying fans here, it's hard, it might be your only time to come out to the ballpark. So we're very cautious and very critical about keeping the infield dirt playable for all of our games.
And so how do you manage those dirt areas? Do you have to top dress that additionally, or?
Yeah, so hot days like this, we're using more of the expanded shale that holds the water. We're actually usually putting standing water after the games or on hot days like this, and it'll just absorb, and it actually makes the dirt play a lot better. It would almost turn into concrete if we didn't water it and things like that. You don't want hard hit balls taking hops or hitting players that could chip a tooth or things like that. You got a prize prospect or shortstop here. You don't want them chipping a tooth where you might be out. Sliding's a big issue. You're sliding into second base or third base. You don't want anyone hurting or tearing up a knee or things like that. So it's real critical just to try to keep it on that fine line of, it's wet enough that it performs the way we need it to, but not too wet where it can play.
That's really fascinating. Is there a certain moisture, or is it more just experience and a field test that
There is moisture meters that you can use. A a lot of it just goes from experience and what you're kind of see. Sometimes if you have a moisture meter, you're trying to get to a certain number, and then that's the number that you'd like to play off of. Okay. It just kind of varies. You know, in Oklahoma, it can be really windy and sunny, or it can be sunny and humid. So you just kind of gotta, or you know, it might be cloudy a different day, so you can't put as much water on it. So it's a very fine line that, you know, you're not looking at just the next day, but you're looking at days ahead and things like that.
Right, so you're always watching the weather for us. With so much work that goes into this, I know, you know, you as a horticulture major obviously love this, but why does somebody put all this effort versus just synthetic?
You know, coming from Oklahoma State, you know, developing all the Bermuda grasses and things like that, it's really fun to get to experience and showcase those as well here. Also, just for safety of players, you know, it's extremely hot here in Oklahoma during the summer months, with players taking batting practice or practice like during the heat of the day, you know, the 4 to 5 o'clock just before the games. It could be very detrimental to players' health and players' safety if we were playing for a synthetic surface down
Absolutely,
here.
and it's nice and cushiony actually. So I imagine that helps them when they're running or sliding, that maybe it gives a little bit more too?
Yeah, so, you know, some standardization of other sports, you might have a G-Max test where the softness, or a shear test where actually where you can see the grass give way or things like that, where a synthetic surface, it might not be as forgiving and things like that. So it is very critical to have that softness and that ability for the grass to give way for players. You know, joints or ligaments or things like that, or bones, or just playing on a soft surface is key.
Well, Jeff, you and your team are doing an excellent job, and me and I know thousands of others appreciate the work that you're doing on a daily, weekly basis out here. Thank you so much for the influence that horticulture has on the game.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Managing weeds in our gardens and landscape is one of our biggest chores, something that we're always dealing with. And ideally, it would be great if, you know, we can control them by hand removal, digging them up, or using mulches. Mulches help quite a bit and help reducing a lot of the weeds in our landscape. However, many times we do need to reach for some herbicides. But the problem is, when we go into the garden centers, there's a lot to choose from, and it can get really confusing. So today I wanted to just kind of cover a few basics on, and hopefully in hopes to help you choose the right herbicide when you're trying to control weeds in the garden. So when you go in, you'll see all kinds of products, and oftentimes we see products with the same name. So for example, here we have 3 different Roundup products. Now initially, Roundup was a product that contained just glyphosate, which is a very common herbicide and one that's been in the news a lot lately because of the questions and how safe it is. And now it's being removed from the market. Glyphosate will be removed from the home lawn and garden product line. But now you see all kinds of products that have Roundup labeled on them. So that has become a brand name, just like Ortho's Weed Be Gone and Ground Clear, and we have Preen, and a number of other manufactured products that have these brand names, but there's multiple products within those brands, and so it gets really confusing. So you need to make sure that you read and follow the label directions carefully. In general, we have weed killers that are labeled for use in lawns, so they're safe to use in lawns to control broadleaf weeds and sometimes control certain grassy weeds and broadleaf weeds. We have products that are labeled for non-crop areas. You're just trying to control all the vegetation. Some of them are labeled as pre-emergence herbicides, which means they have to be applied prior to the weed seeds germinating to get good control, while others are post-emergent control. And so there's lots of different variations in the different types of herbicides that are on the shelves. So it's very important even though these labels are very catchy and help kind of guide you into maybe the overall broad spectrum of what that product will do, it's important to read the labels very carefully. So let's take a look at a few of these. Just to start off, this is the typical Roundup. So this has the glyphosate in it. It's one that we've had for a little while. And like I said, the glyphosate active ingredient is being taken off the market. We liked glyphosate because it was systemic, meaning it's absorbed into the plant and translocated into all parts of the plant, even down to the roots, so you get complete kill. It was non-selective, so it would kill grassy weeds and broadleaf weeds. And it was has very short-lived or not active in the soil at all. So those were all good properties that we really enjoyed. Well, now, here's I believe this is what they are using now. This is, as you can see, it says weed and grass killer, just like this one says, weed and grass killer. But this one has 3 different chemicals in it now instead of just glyphosate. So the triclopyr is one that will control mostly broadleaf weeds. And then we have the fluazepop P-butyl, which is also often sold as Fusilade, is a common name. That one is a grass killer. And then the diquat is kind of a quick burn down for mostly broadleaf weeds. So together, with those 3 together, we get similar control that we would have had with glyphosate. Not quite as effective and as efficient, but it still works. But see, we also have another Roundup product. So again, you can't go by Roundup anymore as you know, a name that you can focus on in terms of one control. This one is labeled to kill weeds, but won't harm lawns. So this one is labeled for use on your turf grasses, and it will kill broadleaf weeds and certain grassy weeds like crabgrass. Now note, this one is also labeled for both cool season grasses and warm season grasses. So something else you have to pay attention to. So the point is, you really need to look at and read and follow those, read the labels prior to, or do some research prior to purchasing the product, okay? So some of these broadleaf, or some of these lawn weed killers are labeled for use on warm season grasses like Bermuda grass, but it may not be labeled for use on cool season grasses like tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass, which we use quite frequently, especially in shadier areas. Here's a couple other examples of, again, products that are labeled for control of weeds. This one is called Sedge Ender, and it's labeled for control of yellow nut sedge, but not purple nut sedge. So yellow and purple nut sedge can both be problems in our landscapes, and it's also labeled for use on cool and warm season lawns. Where this one is called Sedge Hammer, this one has halosulfuran methyl in it. This one's labeled to control both purple and yellow nut sedge and is labeled for use on warm and cool season lawns. While some of the others may be only labeled for use on warm season or cool season, and again, may only control one or the other of the nut sedges. Another couple products we have here, these are garden dusts. And again, they have different chemicals in them. Basically do the same thing in terms of most of the pests that they control. But again, it really helps if you read and follow those label directions carefully. So before you purchase, read those labels, do your research. If you're trying to control specific weeds, make sure that you look on the label and that weed is listed on the label as a weed that will be controlled with this particular product. Otherwise, you know, you might as well move on. So also make sure that you use the proper rates. Don't use less, don't double it. Use only what they tell you to use, because that will be the most effective. Most of our herbicides are more effective early on in the season when the weeds are young versus when they're larger and more mature, they're less effective. You got to be sure that for like some of our broadleaf weed killers, you don't want to apply them when temperatures are above 85 degrees. So like today, we're going to be up in the 90s, so this would not be a day to be applying your broadleaf types of herbicides. You also don't want to apply them to stressed turf grasses or stressed plants because it's going to be less effective. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. When you go into the garden center, you're going to see lots of brand names. Make sure you look at the labels a little bit more carefully. Select the one that's labeled for your specific weed that you're trying to control and your specific site that you want to apply it to. So for example, a vegetable garden versus a lawn versus a landscape bed, because they're not all labeled for the same thing.
Today we're back out here at the OSU Student Farm, and I wanted to take advantage of our crop of tomatoes that are growing and show you a method to help stake them and stabilize them in your garden. So this is called the stake and weave method, and it's a very popular method for trellising your tomatoes. And one of the reasons why it's so popular is because it's pretty simple and doesn't require a lot of materials that you have to keep out of tomato growing season. So a lot of times people might use cattle panels or even those metal cages, but then it's a matter of where do you put those and store those all winter long. So in this method, all we need is some stakes and also some twine. And what we're simply going to do, you can see, I'm going to tie this off right here at this first stake, and I'm actually going to work my way back. So I'm doing this. We have quite a long row here, but I'm doing this in about 15 to 16 foot increments between our T-posts. And then between our T-posts, we also have some rebar stakes as well to just add a little bit of support as we go down through this row here. So what we're gonna do is simply, like I said, we've got our twine, and this is just baling twine tied off here. And we're just going to work our way back and forth between our tomatoes here. So you can see they've grown up from the last time we've done this. So we're coming up about 6 inches from the last weave. And then we're going to go back and forth between our tomato plants. And what that really does is that distributes the weight of the plant back and forth on this twine as we work our way down. Now when we get to a post, what we're going to do is circle our post a couple of times here so that it just supports that twine. The tricky thing is making sure that it stays really tight as you work your way down this length. So you can see I've worked my way down one side, and at this point I went ahead and tied it off and I've started another line. And at this point we're going to work with that second line all the way back, and we're going to weave. You can see how this tomato went over on this side, this one is on this side. So what we're now going to do is take our second line and weave on the opposite side that we did the first line. You can see it's tied at the same height, so these lines are going to be crisscrossing right at about the same place on that tomato, kind of holding it, pinching it in between there. But this is not pinching it, it's not going to damage it or anything. I will say the bigger and kind of overgrown your tomatoes get, you might lose a few branches as you're doing this, but it's okay, it's just a little pruning on the plant. So we're going to work our way back, again keeping this tight. Now you could have done one string all the way down and just looped around your stake here and worked your way back. But a lot of times you'll lose that tension as you work bigger, longer distances with your string. And so this is one method that we've just found that works really well here, to go kind of about 15, 16 feet, tie it off, and then start another line to go the other side. Again, you're going to do this. You can see we've done it about 6 to 8 inches every so often, and as the plant grows we'll continue to do that, and that's when you hope you have long T-posts, so that depending on how big your tomato plant is, that you can continue to stake and weave it as it grows. So we're using traditional T-posts here, so we're not going to be able to do too much longer, but these are indeterminate tomatoes, meaning that they will continue to grow. So we've got this row of tomato plants all nice and trellised now using this stake and weave method, and it's just going to be a matter of time as they continue to grow that we have to come back through and do another row. So it can be a little bit labor intensive, having to constantly come back and check versus having a cage that you can weave your tomato plant or something. But again, the nice thing about this is when you're done is a matter of just staking or cutting this baling twine off and then removing the T-post. So if you have a tractor or something like that, you can easily get rid of this material and clean your bed, and then you don't have a lot of materials to have to store during those winter months. It definitely is probably easier with two people doing this, somebody to kind of manage and keep that string tight while somebody else is sort of finding the next tomato plant to divide them and weave between there. So you can see it's a little bit messy. You'll get some of that tomato oils on you and stuff like that, but a great method in order to keep the plant sort of sandwiched and up off of the ground, and that helps increase air circulation and reduce any fungus and disease problems on your tomato plants. There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead. Join us next week right here on Oklahoma Gardening as the temperatures crank up and things begin drying out. In case you think I don't do my own stunts. Well, I think it's interesting. Sorry. To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriters, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, and Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Additional support is also provided by Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticulture Society, the Tulsa Garden Club, and the Tulsa Garden Center.